They say the quietest towns hide the darkest secrets. Millfield was one such town. A small, picturesque community where tree-lined streets and smiling neighbors painted the perfect picture of safety and serenity. It was a place where children played freely in yards, where everyone knew each other's name, where fear was supposed to be nothing more than a distant rumor. But on one ordinary summer evening in July 2018, everything changed. The silence was shattered by a nightmare no one could have imagined. Emily Parker was just 12 years old, an energetic, bright girl with dreams too big for a town so small. That night, after spending hours playing at her best friend Lucy's house, Emily said goodbye and began the short walk home. The route was familiar, a path she had taken countless times before. Down Oak Street, past the park, and up the driveway to her family's cozy home. But that night, Emily never made it home. Her mother, Karen Parker, was waiting anxiously by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on as dusk turned into darkness. Minutes passed. The front door remained firmly shut. The sounds of footsteps never came. When Emily's father, Tom, returned from work later that evening, the panic was already gripping the family. They called her phone repeatedly, each ring unanswered. The hours crawled by like an unbearable eternity. By midnight, fear had turned into full-blown terror. The next morning, Millfield's police department launched a missing persons investigation. Local residents banded together, scouring every inch of the neighborhood, combing through thick woods and abandoned buildings on the outskirts of town. Flyers bearing Emily's innocent face were plastered on every lamppost, every store window. But hope was fragile, and the silence from Emily's phone was deafening. As days passed, troubling clues began to surface. The last messages on Emily's phone were chilling. Vague texts that suggested someone had been watching her, tracking her movements, and knew her schedule intimately. Friends who had noticed a strange man loitering near the playground weeks before came forward. But when those leads were presented to the police, the investigation took an unsettling turn. Officers dismissed key witness accounts as unreliable. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses was reportedly lost or never reviewed. Questions about possible suspects were met with vague responses and delayed follow-ups. It was as if a silent wall had gone up, blocking progress and leaving the family isolated in their grief and confusion. As public frustration grew, whispers began to spread. Rumors of police corruption, of influential figures within Millfield protecting their own, and a collective unwillingness to expose the town's ugly underbelly. The Parker family refused to accept these half-truths. They started their own inquiry, reaching out to journalists and advocacy groups beyond the town's borders. Soon, what was believed to be a simple missing child case evolved into a far darker story. Investigative reporters uncovered allegations of a secret trafficking ring operating quietly within Millfield's shadows. Vulnerable children, some from neighboring towns, were reportedly being exploited by a network with connections that stretched into the highest levels of local government and law enforcement. The revelations sent shockwaves through the community. Families who once felt safe now eyed their neighbors with suspicion. The town's leaders scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing statements promising cooperation and swift justice. But many questioned the sincerity of these promises. Behind closed doors, the Parker family faced a grueling battle. As they fought for answers, they also had to confront the painful reality that the system meant to protect their daughter had failed her. Their story became a rallying cry for others silenced by fear. Victims who dared not speak out, families left broken by similar horrors, and a nation forced to look at the ugly truths hidden in its quietest corners. Emily Parker's kidnapping was not just a crime of abduction. It was a brutal expose of how power, privilege, and corruption can twist a community into a web of secrecy, turning protectors into perpetrators and silencing the very voices that need to be heard the most. The days after Emily Parker's disappearance were the hardest Millfield had ever endured. As news spread beyond the town, a swarm of reporters and investigators descended, each eager to uncover the truth. But what they found was a tangled web of silence, intimidation, and hidden agendas, a nightmare far bigger than anyone could have imagined. From the start, Emily's case was plagued by oddities. The initial police response was slow, and their communication with the family was limited and guarded. Several officers assigned to the investigation had long-standing ties to Millfield's most influential families who suddenly found themselves under suspicion. One key witness, a local teenager named Jake, came forward with information that could have broken the case wide open. Jake claimed he had seen Emily being forced into a black van late that night, and he even remembered the license plate. But the police dismissed his testimony as unreliable. A young kid's overactive imagination, they said. What no one knew was that Jake's uncle was a vocal critic of the town's leadership, and many suspected his testimony was being quietly suppressed to protect powerful people. Meanwhile, Karen and Tom Parker refused to sit back. Frustrated by the lack of progress, they hired a private investigator, Sarah Collins, who specialized in child abduction cases. Sarah quickly realized that Millfield's law enforcement was not just slow, they were obstructing justice. Sarah's investigation uncovered a series of disturbing connections. Several missing children cases from nearby towns had suspicious links to Millfield, all involving similar patterns. Young girls disappearing near their homes, cryptic messages on their phones before vanishing, and a total breakdown in police communication. Digging deeper, Sarah discovered rumors of a secret ring exploiting vulnerable children. The ring reportedly involved local businessmen, law enforcement officers, and even politicians. Their influence was so extensive that anyone who tried to expose them faced intimidation or worse. Whispers about an underground trafficking network began to circulate, involving coercion, abuse, and manipulation. Families were terrified to speak out, fearing retaliation. The once trusting community was fractured by suspicion and fear. Adding fuel to the fire, a whistleblower from within the police department leaked internal documents suggesting that evidence had been deliberately destroyed or ignored. Surveillance tapes from the night of Emily's disappearance mysteriously went missing, and key officers were transferred or resigned under unclear circumstances. The Parker family became public symbols of courage and resilience. Despite the threats and harassment, they kept pushing, holding vigils, rallying support on social media, and demanding a federal investigation. The tension in Millfield was palpable. Town meetings grew hostile, and protests erupted demanding transparency and accountability. Yet, behind closed doors, the powerful cabal tightened its grip, using every tool at its disposal to silence dissent. One night, Karen received an anonymous message: "Stop digging, or you'll disappear like Emily." It was a terrifying reminder that the threat was real, that the shadows lurking in Millfield were willing to do anything to protect their secrets. As public pressure mounted, the FBI finally stepped in, launching a full-scale investigation. Their arrival shook the foundations of Millfield's power structure. Arrests followed, some low-level operatives, but also a few surprising names with deep ties to the town's elite. But even with federal oversight, justice was slow and messy. Court battles dragged on for years, victims struggled to find their voices, and many questions remained unanswered. Emily Parker's fate was never fully revealed. Some believe she was trafficked out of state. Others fear she never survived. The pain and mystery continue to haunt Millfield, a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest evil thrives where no one dares to look. The FBI's involvement marked a turning point, but the path to justice was anything but straightforward. Millfield's once pristine image was now cracked and tarnished, revealing a disturbing network of corruption that had thrived in the shadows for years. The investigation peeled back layers of deception, exposing a horrifying reality few had dared to imagine. At the heart of the scandal was a covert trafficking ring operating under the protection of powerful individuals who manipulated the system to stay above suspicion. Victims like Emily Parker were lured, trapped, and vanished into a world of exploitation that no one wanted to see. The federal prosecutors faced intense resistance. Key witnesses recanted under pressure or disappeared altogether. Evidence was challenged and often dismissed due to procedural technicalities. It became clear that the influence of Millfield's elite reached far beyond the town's borders, into courts, law enforcement agencies, and political offices. Despite the obstacles, the Parker family never gave up. Tom and Karen became relentless advocates, using every platform available to demand answers and keep the spotlight on the case. They met with senators, joined human trafficking awareness campaigns, and worked alongside other families who had lost children under similar circumstances. Public outrage grew nationwide. Documentaries, podcasts, and investigative news segments put Millfield's dark underbelly on display for the world to see. The case became emblematic of a broken system where privilege and power could silence even the most heinous crimes. But the most shocking revelation came when leaked FBI files uncovered a direct connection between the trafficking ring and a prominent local politician, someone who had long presented themselves as a pillar of the community. Allegations suggested that this figure used their position to cover up abuse and obstruct investigations. The arrest of this politician sent shockwaves through Millfield. Protests erupted outside the courthouse, with citizens demanding further accountability and reform. However, the trial revealed the deep-seated challenges of prosecuting such entrenched corruption. Jurors were intimidated, evidence was mysteriously lost, and key witnesses were threatened. In the end, convictions were secured only for a handful of lower-tier members. While many higher-ups walked free or received lenient sentences, the justice system had cracked. But the cracks remained wide. Emily's fate, tragically, was never conclusively determined. Some family members hold on to hope that she might still be alive, hidden somewhere far away. Others fear the worst, that the system's failures cost her life. Millfield remains haunted. The townspeople carry the scars of betrayal and silence. Yet, from this darkness emerged a powerful movement: survivors, families, and advocates pushing for transparency, reform, and justice for all victims of trafficking and abuse. Emily Parker's story is a chilling reminder that beneath the surface of even the most idyllic communities, evil can lurk. It's a call to action, urging society to confront uncomfortable truths, challenge corrupt systems, and protect the vulnerable before it's too late. Because sometimes the most horrifying crimes are the ones we choose to ignore.